I'm Michael Kozakowski. As Newcastle County Recorder of Deeds, we are the repository for all land transaction records, corporate filings, and financing statements for all of Newcastle County. My office is responsible for receiving, recording, processing, delivering, and providing you, the public, and the primary business organization with copies of these important legal documents. They call me the Recorder of Deeds because 90% of the documents that we process are made up of deeds, mortgages, assignments, and satisfactions. Most people don't spend a lot of time thinking about deeds, but when it comes to financial transactions involving property ownership, your deed may be your most important legal document. Let's take a few minutes to look at what deeds are and why they're so important.
A deed is a document that can most simply be defined as a legal instrument used to grant a right. In real estate transactions, a deed conveys title or ownership to real property. Deeds are important because, without a deed, an individual or business does not legally own a property.
When you go into a store and you buy, you put a quarter in a soda machine and you get a soda out of the machine, nobody's going to dispute that you're entitled to drink that soda. But when you want to establish your ownership to a property somewhere out there in the county, this is the document that represents the ownership of that piece of ground that you're either have a right to use, or a right to rent, or whatever it is. And so that's what's so critical about the deed. It represents the indicia of ownership of that piece of ground.
Laws and legal language have evolved over many years to protect landowners from having their property stolen or misused. But unless you have legal training, the terminology used in deeds can be intimidating and confusing. Let's review some of the basic terms used in a typical deed. Since all property transactions involve a current owner and a buyer, you should be aware that a deed describes the owner as a grantor and the buyer as a grantee. The amount of money paid for a property is described as the recital of consideration. To avoid confusion about the exact location of a property referenced in a deed, the document includes a legal description. The accuracy of this legal description is critical. Typically, a professional surveyor is used to ensure that a deed's legal description is clear and valid.
To be a surveyor, you need to be an engineer, and they have special equipment that they go out and actually measure off the dimensions of the parcel, and that's what's used for the deed. So it's very exact dimensions, and that's what the homeowner is buying. Sometimes when you go to settlement, you'll either choose that you want a survey done or not. Most people want their property surveyed and staked so that they know where they can put a fence or that type of thing later on.
Finally, the being clause recites prior ownership of the property. Anytime a property is sold, it's important that the buyer verify that the seller is the legal owner of the property before any money changes hands. Buyers often retain a lawyer who then uses a title company to search the Recorder of Deeds records to establish what is called a chain of title. A chain of title is a series of documents that establish a property's ownership over a period of time. This documentation ensures that a grantor has the legal right to sell a property to a grantee. According to law, a deed must include specific information and formatting to be accurately recorded. For example, every deed recorded must have the name and address of the preparer and the name and address of the person to whom the document is to be returned. This information needs to appear in the upper right-hand corner of the document. Every deed is required to state the tax parcel number of each property being transferred. This number must be placed in the upper right-hand corner above the prepared buy address. For assessment purposes, the grantee's address is required on each deed. Since deeds are such valuable documents, it's a good idea to have a basic understanding of what the information in a deed actually means. But the most important thing you may need to know about a deed to property you own is where and how it is stored. Take good care of your deeds. They protect your rights of ownership.